Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Hamlin Leo lecture. My name is Molly Glevy. I work in the Alumni Relations Office here at Hamlin, and I'm really excited about today's lecture. It's our last Leo lecture of the academic year. We are 1 week out from commencement here at Hamlin, so students are heading into finals and enjoying everything that early May brings on a college campus. So I have a few things to start us off, and then I'm going to hand the reins over to my colleagues before we begin speaking about AI among us, navigating the future of coexistence. I will tell you that you will be muted and your camera will be off for today's presentation. I know we all know some of these things by now. If you have a question for our speakers, go ahead and use the Q&A function. Please go ahead and put questions into that as they come to mind. Don't feel like you need to wait to the end of the session to ask your questions. Marcela and Irina, who I will introduce in a moment, will have some time at the end, but by no means wait for that. Go ahead and put them in as they come to mind. If anything comes up about the logistics or anything like that, go ahead and put it in the chat. Wherever you put your comments or your questions, we'll find them. So don't worry too much about how you get them our direction. And one other thing I will say is we are looking ahead to next year's Leo lectures. As always, if you have any suggestions about speakers or topics, faculty, alums, you name it, send an email to alum@hamlin.edu, and you would be amazed at the interesting things that we come up with based on suggestions. So go ahead and do that. And without further ado, I am going to introduce my two colleagues who are joining us today to talk about such an interesting topic. No pressure, guys, but I can't wait for this one. Dean Marcela Kostihova is the Dean of the College of Liberal Arts of the School of Education and Leadership, School of Business here at Hamlin, a professor of English in her pre-administrative life. She has, since stepping into leadership roles, developed a keen interest in leadership development, faculty mentoring, strategic planning, embedding high impact practices across the curriculum, and of course, most recently, harnessing the powers of AI to advance higher education. There's much more detail about Marcela's background on the screen in front of you. Those are some of the highlights of her long career at Hamlin. And we also have Irina Makarevitch, who is an associate provost here at Hamlin. Irina is a plant geneticist with a strong research record in the genetic and epigenetic regulation of plant responses to environmental stress. And in her current role, she leads university-wide initiatives focused on faculty development, high-impact teaching and learning, program review, and student learning assessment, and of course, also plays a key role in shaping institutional policy and dialogue around the ethical, creative, and pedagogical interactions with AI in higher education. And with that, I am going to let Marcela and Irina take it away.
Hello, everybody. My name is Marcela Kostihova. Thank you, Molly, so much for that great introduction. I'm joined here by my colleague, Irina Makarevitch. I would very much appreciate if Molly could just confirm that everybody can see my slides, because that's all I can see.
You sure? Yep, you're all good.
Great. And we're here to talk to you about the basics of artificial intelligence. So it's something that here at Hamlin, the faculty and staff have started exploring at a very accelerated pace. We're going to talk a little bit about where we currently are with that. And today's talk is kind of just overview of what is happening with AI and some of the directions that we foresee that AI is going to go in. Um, as Molly was saying, as we're preparing for the future, we're very interested in being a resource for all of you around artificial intelligence. So as we'll be sharing later, we also have a number of continuing studies modules that you could tap into if you wanted to learn more, or we would be happy to come back at a future date to come back to another Leo lecture if there was a general interest in a particular aspect of AI, because it's an enormous field. to talk about that, to provide those resources to our community. So with that, our plan for today is to provide an overview of what AI is and how it is currently being applied, especially in terms of generative AI, to talk about some of the current limitations, of course, discuss some of the ethical considerations. And the thing that we are looking forward to the most is to having a robust question and answer period with all of you. So please make sure that you note all of your questions, that you already put them into the question and answer tab, so that when we get to that segment of our time together today, we can engage with all of your thoughts. So one of the things that we hear a lot is that AI will basically replace us, that it will take all of our jobs. We do not exactly agree with that. We do not think that AI will completely replace humans, or not for any, not at least for several decades, if ever at all. But if you are still employed, then you do need to be paying attention to AI, because if it is something that you put on the back burner, then it's possible that people who do know how to use it effectively might step in and to kind of pick up the pace of what we expect is going to be an accelerated pace of the workplace. So we already, or current research is suggesting that every single job is going to change. So it's not only going to be the field of computer science or data analytics, but 100% of jobs have currently at least one task that AI can do better than humans today. And AI is growing in its capabilities. So what it can do today is better than what it could do yesterday. But in every single job, every single calling, there's already something that AI can help with. 80% of the US workers could have 10% of their tasks at least affected by artificial intelligence. And 19% of workers, so almost 20%, may see at least 50% of tasks affected by AI. So AI will not replace us, it will not take our jobs away, but it will change the way in which we interact with our jobs and what we do on the daily basis and how we do our work. What is AI? So, artificial intelligence is a technological simulation of human intelligence. So, it's a simulation of human intelligence that has been programmed to acquire and systematize information, to organize this information, and to learn correct information as needed. It is not sentient. So it is a program, but the program by now is learning by itself. That is how it was programmed on a large sets of data. It does not actually know things, right? So when you ask AI something, or you ask it to do something on your behalf, it provides answers based on its prediction of what will make the prompter satisfied and happy, based on its analysis of whatever data sets it has access to. Of course, the larger the data sets, the more complex the model. So again, it is a program that has been set loose to learn about all kinds of different applications, or all kinds of aspects of human knowledge or jobs, and it learns by itself. So we don't always need exactly how it does what it does, but what you're getting out of AI is its prediction based on what it sees in those models. So if those models are flawed, it will reproduce those flaws for you as well. If those models are really complex, you may get much better results. Now, in terms of what kind of AI there is narrow or weak AI that has been around for quite some time. So that is something that you might use for specific tasks. So it could be face recognition. You've probably been using, if you shop on Amazon, that has had AI built into it for quite some time, because it analyzes your behavior on the website and what you look at in order to offer you other products. It has been in, for instance, in Facebook, directing your feed. It's been all around us for quite some time. The next step up is artificial general intelligence, or AGI, which is seen as strong AI as opposed to the narrow, weak AI, which does general task. So that is the one that can learn, and it can focus on human-like tasks. One of the things that we talk about quite a bit is super intelligence, or sentient AI. So AI that actually does think and it's aware, which would surpass human intelligence. and could function autonomously. So that is what people talk about when they worry that AI is going to take over the world, that it's going to become the overlord. That is a completely different level uh, of AI. In terms of where we currently are, in 2025, we're not even quite yet at the point of very functional artificial general intelligence. So we have a lot of narrow, weak AIs. We have ChatGPT is aspiring to being a general intelligence, but at this point, it's still learning and it's kind of at its nascent stages. Whether or not we're ever going to get to the level of super intelligence is, of course, subject to very heated debate among all of the experts and also the general populace. Experts are all over the place in terms of those predictions. There's some who say that it is inevitable and it might happen within the next 50 to 100 years. Others say that it will probably happen, but on the order of several hundred years. And then there are others who are absolutely certain that it will never happen. So those, all of those programmers and philosophers agree that on the off chance that it could happen, what humanity has to focus on right now is the problem of alignment, something that you might hear about, which is to make sure that if ever AI were to become sentient, we have to make sure that we have prepared for it the right fencing and the right kind of values to make sure that its goals would be aligned with the goals of humanity. And so that is a whole field that is currently working at breakneck speed to make sure that on the off chance that could ever happen, that humanity has had some of those conversations and put in some of those fences. So some of the issues with AI, and some of it I've already mentioned, but it's very important to remember these. So artificial intelligence is not actually intelligent. So to talk about artificial intelligence is a little bit of a misnomer because it is basically just a predictive software. So it identifies patterns in data and it models its responses based on the degree of supervised training and fact check. So it might be inaccurate, right? But every day as that fact checking is happening, it is getting significantly better. So one of the things you might have heard is garbage in, garbage out. If the underlying data is flawed or biased or incomplete or not very numerous, what you're going to get is not very good. The thing is, it reflects the data that it has ingested. There has been a really interesting experiment some years ago where one of the AI models was released on in Twitter, and within several hours, it became so toxic that it had to be shut down. So, depending on what data it is training on, that is kind of the flavor, and that is going to be the kind of answers that you will be getting out of it. The other thing that is incredibly important to remember is that AI wants to please you, that the way that these platforms are put together, it is to deliver to you the answers that you want. So it will sound in a way that might be convincing and it will give you an answer, even if it doesn't have it. So if it doesn't know, because it doesn't know, if it cannot predict the answer, it will just make one up. It just will make up the most plausible thing that it thinks that you will like. So it's useful to think about AI as a puppy with a wagging tail. It will bring you something, it will bring you a slipper, but it might not at all be believable. And it also matters how you ask the question that you ask it. So, one thing that I would always recommend is to be polite with your AI. Research is showing that the more polite you are in addressing your AI, the better the answers are going to be that you get back. And you also have to make sure that you are structuring those requests in a way that will lead to the best kind of results. So there are quite a few programs that you can pursue online or classes on prompt engineering. Again, the platforms are getting better at becoming more conversational and understanding what it is that actually you're asking, even if you're not being very clear. But still, it's very important to think through how you're asking, what you're asking for, and to remember that if you give it the same prompt, even half an hour apart, or if all of us right now go to our favorite AIs and we give it the exactly same prompt, we will probably get completely different results because it always redoes that prediction. It doesn't repeat itself. And before I hand it over to Irina, I wanted to share a very, for me, memorable example of what has happened to me recently. So some of you know that I have a 17-year-old son who is in third year of high school, and he's currently in linear algebra. And when I was in high school, I thought of myself as pretty good at math, but now that he is learning it himself and he sometimes asks me for help, I don't necessarily remember all of the things that I learned in high school. And so I went to ChatGPT to remind myself on how to do synthetic division. And to be completely honest, I never learned how to do synthetic division in high school. In my time, we just did paper and pencil division. And so when he was doing synthetic division as part of linear and algebra, I didn't even know what that was. So ChatGPT and I sat together and I was learning all of these different things. And as I grasped the concepts or regrasped the concepts, I had ChatGPT give me some sample problems so that I could make sure that I actually learned it. And then I was checking my answers. And so I fed it one of my answers, which I thought that the answer was 2x plus 3 times x minus 3. And it told me that I was wrong because I needed 2x plus 3 instead of 2x plus 3. So that was one of those moments that it took me a while to really grasp that this supposedly super advanced algorithm could not even understand or sufficiently explain a situation and was just feeding me complete garbage. So whenever you're interacting with AI, just remember that it is a tool. It is not an ultimate source of truth, and there are still quite a few bugs. And with that, I will hand it over to Irina.
Thank you, Marcela. My name is Irina, and I will guide you for the next several minutes. If you want to scan this QR code or go to this link that is on your slides, there are more resources. It's a Google document where we collect various resources related to AI, and we wanted to share them with you. And you will see this QR code later at the end of our slides as well. It's useful to think about AI as an assistant. So I work a lot with students, and so when I have students in my lab, they're helpful, but they can do things that I teach them or I explain to them, and I can't just expect right away that they will be perfect at everything. And the tasks that they do and the output that I get from the students frequently vary between different students and between different tasks. And so that's the same with various AI tools. AI has not really been new around here, but in 2022, when generative AI went to everybody essentially at this high scale, everybody had a chance or have a chance now to play with that. And so AI that is focused on text and language and now on the pictures and images and videos as well, is what we think about generative AI. And it can help with productivity, with doing the tasks that we actually don't want to do. So for example, when you do various kinds of reports and you don't necessarily want to do them, AI can actually help you really well to do those reports so that you have more time to do something that you actually care about doing. It also helps with creativity. So you can use this generative AI tools as your thought partner, or you can ask it to prompt you to think about various questions, and it can help you to be more creative. Marcela, can you move on? Yeah, thank you. So when we think about AI, we think about multiple different tools. So it's actually not just ChatGPT. It's not just Gemini, the Google tool. It's multiple different tools. And the way they're being trained right now, many of them are useful for slightly different things. And so when you get into this field, it's fine to start with just one of those tools and kind of see where you're going to go and what you want to do. But in reality, it's not just one thing. We collected a bunch of various AI tools that we played with at some point over here and tried to categorize it based on different tasks. This whole list is not supposed to be the whole list. There are many, many more tools out there, and we constantly learn about new ones. And at some point, very quickly, it feels very overwhelming. So I would recommend, if you're just starting, I would recommend starting with a couple and see which one you like. I played a lot with Perplexity, for example, for a while, and now I primarily use ChatGPT for a bunch of different tasks. And ChatGPT now can do images as well. And so in a way, it's helpful to just stick with one. But remember, there are many, many of them out there. As a scientist, I think about what's going on with AI right now. And every day you can see multiple papers where people from different fields, from social sciences, from natural sciences, from humanities, are trying different things with AI and reporting on what AI can do and how AI impacts humans, how interactions with AI impact us. And every day you can read multiple papers, multiple studies that sometimes contradict each other, and sometimes they align really well. Regardless, to me, it's like science happening right now. So I'm very excited to teach my next science course to my students and show how science works using this as an example. So we as a society got a new toy, a new tool, and now we don't quite understand how it works. So people from all the different fields, all the different science and humanity fields are getting there to test it. And sometimes the results don't align very well, and that means that we generate new hypotheses and test it again. And so I will share a couple of examples of what AI is doing, but all of those examples get outdated pretty much daily, and more of them are being reported right now. So for example, AI, when it's used in medical diagnostics, it's not being used to completely, like, instead of doctors, it's actually helping doctors. So for example, pre-screening of the images, the breast cancer images with AI helps to detect about 20% more breast cancer cases. And it doesn't really increase false positive rates, which is really good. A lot of doctors, when they're asked about using AI, when they were using AI, say that this technology helps them see the patients, not just the images and not just the technology. AI is used in other fields as well. So for example, in the studies of how it can help in legal fields, AI works, ChatGPT in this case specifically, was asked to do several tasks that junior lawyers and senior lawyers are doing in different law firms. And you can see that ChatGPT is super fast. It costs fractions compared to humans, and it doesn't quite perform as well as well-trained and well-experienced senior lawyers, but it pretty much outperforms junior lawyers and their helpers who are working for the law firms. Of course, as an educator, I think about this as like, or should. So if all the companies are going to start hiring, using various generative AI tools instead of their junior workers, junior lawyers or helpers in their companies, and how do people ever become experienced senior lawyers? So we need to be careful as educators to make sure that ChatGPT doesn't influence this pipeline of how people learn to become experienced experts in their fields. ChatGPT is used in various writing assignments, and that's probably what you've heard a lot about, how people use it. And that's true that people who do various occupation-specific writing in many different fields report that they work faster when they use ChatGPT, and other tools as well. Just this particular study was using ChatGPT, and that they produce higher quality work. There is a lot of discussion about the ethics of using it for writing. But again, it doesn't mean using AI for writing doesn't mean that you ask AI to produce writing and that then you copy and paste and just say, hey, I just wrote this. There are so many different ways to use generative AI to help you with this writing process, starting with, hey, can you generate different ideas? And then you can explore these ideas with generative AI. You can ask generative AI to help you to polish your writing or to make it into a particular style or to make it into a particular length of the text. And you can probably guess this by now. I'm Russian, so I speak with an accent. And so the whole mystery of articles in English, like they, all of those things, it remains mystery for me after 25 years living here. So I'm actually very grateful for any tool, including AI, that can fix my grammar. That's actually true in multiple studies. People see that the greatest impact that on the quality of the writing that people see is on novice and lower skilled workers, so those younger junior people who are learning the tricks, and especially people, in case of writing, people who for whom English is not the first language. And so in a way, people think about these tools as the potential to decrease inequality, to make the difference between people who are entering the field and people who are experts in the field a little bit flatter. AI is used in online counseling as well. And if you talk to a psychologist, you will get difference of opinion about whether it's good, whether it's bad, what that means. But generative AI has been shown to help people with peer support, to help with detection of distress, with different consolations in different kinds of situations. And I'm not going to go into more specific details, but you can try to talk to your generative, to your favorite ChatGPT generative AI tool when you want feedback on different feelings and different in different situations. And it doesn't judge you. It sometimes really helps you process the situation. And you should try it and see how it feels for you.
And we wanted to make sure that we also mention kind of where we are as a university, in case that's something that you're interested in. So since last year, we've been working in a lot of different areas. So we have worked with the faculty to define new policies around how we expect or don't expect students to be using AI in their courses. So we do not have a university-wide policy that would either mandate or prohibit the use of AI in courses, but rather our policy says that all faculty have to be upfront with their students about how they would like them, if at all, to use artificial intelligence in their courses or in their assignments. So a faculty member can have for one of their courses a policy of no use of AI if the course is such that student learning without this technology would be the most beneficial to the learning process. Or faculty can be on the other side of the spectrum and integrate AI into all of their learning materials. Or it's also possible for a faculty member to ensure that they're clear about different assignments having different kind of expectations. So we don't want students to be surprised or penalized. We would like our faculty to be very clear about it, but ultimately it is all decided on a faculty and a course level in terms of how AI is going to be used, if at all. We do expect that everyone on our campus is transparent about the use of AI. And so that would include students, but also faculty who should model this and our staff. So if AI is being used, that there is appropriate citing so that it's transparent that AI was being used and which AI. We encourage student engagement in course policy development, so conversations about AI rather than just a policy or a statement, to make sure that students understand why different things are being done and that they have an active voice in defining those boundaries and policies. And we want to make sure that all of our course assignments and syllabi are very explicit. We've also embedded some language around AI into our honor code. And at the same time, we have been very clear about trying to discourage just a basic punitive attitude among our faculty. Rather than just saying AI is never allowed because students use it in so many different ways, not all of which, or not even most of which, would count as cheating. to have faculty have that open-ended conversation and clarity around how AI is to be used, because it is a tool that at this point the majority of students are reporting using in one way or another. If you are interested, the full guidelines and the policy can be accessed through the QR code or through this link that you have here. We have also begun conversations with faculty about potentially adding a skills-based minor in AI applications so that students who are interested in learning those skills in a more comprehensive way and showcasing to prospective employers or to graduate school that they have those skills so that they could get that credential. And we are discussing other programmatic developments to make sure that our students are fully prepared.
It's impossible to talk about AI and not to talk about ethics of using AI. And so I'll talk a little bit about that. In my world, I think about AI as something that is not creating new issues, not creating new ethical dilemmas, but highlights existing ethical issues. And maybe it provides us with a chance to reconsider or review what we are currently doing and thinking about how we can do it differently. So we, of course, want our students and us all to use AI responsibly. What does it mean? Well, one of the things that frequently comes up is that AI is an incredible tool to create deepfakes, right? To spread misinformation that is very believable. So you can make videos with anybody speaking any language, saying anything, and it's going to be completely believable. So we need to think about how people don't do this, but probably more importantly, how people who see those videos think about whether it's real or not, how they check this information, how they stop spreading the misinformation. AI discussions frequently center around different biases and different algorithms, and it has a huge capacity to perpetuate what you already think, right? So you will hear from AI what you already think because it reflects back to what you're telling it and it tries to please you. And so then we will potentially create more separation between people, not necessarily helping people talk to each other more. I wanted to show this as an example on biases with AI. People talk about it a lot. So I asked a tool that is called Recraft.ai to create images of doctors. And you've probably heard about this. And it has been in the discussions in 2022. I did this a couple of months ago, and it's still there. So when you ask this particular tool to create images of doctors, it primarily shows you men. As soon as you ask it to, hey, create an image of a nurse, it right away really happily shows you the image of a woman. These tools have been trained on images on the internet. So it's not AI that is evil. It's AI reflects to us what we produced as a society. And now we need to think about these biases. And it's a chance for us to think about what we are and who we are. And then, of course, a lot of people, rightly so, talk about environmental impact of AI. Those training these tools requires a lot of, it's really expensive, not only in terms of money, but it's also in terms of energy and in terms of water that is used to cool down those engines. And so right now it's very, very energy hungry. And so we need to think about how we make this impact more equitable so that people who use AI pay for it. And maybe we need to think about how, maybe using AI, we can think about how we can decrease this environmental impact as well. So if you want to read more about environmental impact of AI, I highly recommend this book that is called Atlas of AI. It was actually published in 2022, right before ChatGPT hit everybody, but it has really great discussion about what communities, what countries, who actually pays for AI and other kinds of technologies as well, and who gets to use that. People also talk a lot about what I call work done by AI for AI. So in higher education, there are a lot of different tasks that we do that we don't necessarily like doing, and that ideally there is a point in this. So for example, faculty ask students to do a lot of assignments and to do a lot of homework. Students don't really want to do this. Faculty don't really want to grade. If faculty instructors make those assignments without actually thinking about why those assignments are assigned, then we are creating the work that potentially can be done by AI, meaning students will use AI to do them, for AI, meaning that faculty can use AI to grade it. And nobody really wants to do this. This is not the situation where we want to be. So we need to think about how, again, it's not a new thing that AI created. I think AI provides us with an opportunity to think about what we are doing. Why are we assigning those assignments? How do we change the way we teach in the way that this work becomes meaningful and cannot be done by AI for AI? And then, of course, we talked a little bit about equity. We need to think a lot about equity in both access to different generative AI tools. They differ a lot. The free versions versus paid versions are really different. There are more and more variety and various paid versions that eventually will, I'm assuming, will become more expensive. And so we need to think about that. I also think that we need to teach our students how to use AI effectively so that the outcomes of students using AI become more equitable as well. So to summarize what we told you today, AI is a simulation of human intelligence. It currently uses a lot of data and a lot of computational power, which essentially means it's very energy hungry. It uses nonlinear algorithms that in a way feel like black boxes. I'm not going to go to specific examples to save us time for questions. But I think about those large language models as, or training those models, there's essentially two steps. We have these general ones that are getting trained on a variety of essentially internet data. And you can think of that as training in like a high school or general education classes. And then all of those tools can be, all of those models can be specifically trained for your own purposes, or the purposes that you wanted to be trained on, either for creating special images or for responding in a specific way to, let's say, students' complaints or students' requests in colleges and things like that. And so this specific training, or like in analysis of various images for brain cancer, for example. So this specific training is more like a medical school, a graduate school training. And so we have this different levels of training with those models. And at that point, it's really important to pick the right tool for the right job and what you want to do with that. So thank you for, I really like to think about future, right? So we are right now in the situation when we don't really know what's going on. So we have this data hungry and energy hungry AI, but there are so many people who are working on figuring out how to make AI better. So for example, if you're interested, just Google TED AI. There are tons of different talks there. And some of those talks talk about what's going on right now in research labs across the country. So people are trying to figure out how to use what we know about the human brain and transfer it back to AI and figure out how we can teach AI as humans are being taught, for example, using various quantum models, using various fusions of cells, neurons from the brain with the silicon that is like computers and AI together. Can we power AI in a way that is similar to how human brain is being powered, which is like a lot less of energy. So in a way, if we solve these issues with energy hungry and data hungry AI, and we get those tools to work well for us, then it's a really interesting question. Are we fundamentally changing what most of us will be doing in, I don't know, 10, 15, 50 years? And then what will it mean to be human and to live in this world? I think we live in a very interesting times when we can think about those things and nobody really knows the answers. So this is the QR code that I mentioned before. If you are interested in getting more resources, and we try to update this file once in a while, so you are welcome to use that. And thank you so much for hanging out with us. I think we are ready for your questions.
All right, you guys. I'm going to start off with one of my own. So do you see like K-12 students or like first year students coming in, are they are high school juniors and seniors talking about AI in the classroom? Or would you say on the whole, when students are in their first year at Hamlin or first year at college, they're being introduced to these topics in an academic way for the first time?
So that's a really interesting question, and I think that it depends on which schools those students are coming from. So over the last year, I've been participating in a statewide conversation with representatives from various districts and schools um, that resulted from being tasked by Governor Walz to develop a policy for the whole state of Minnesota around AI. And so at present, there are entire districts that are developing policies and that are embedding curriculum on digital literacy and AI use into coursework as early as middle school. So I think that some of our students coming to Hamlin will come already with a scaffolded experience of working with AI for the past 6 years, so that they will not be novices at all. And that's going to probably happen within the next 2 to 3 years, I would say, and probably very soon the entire state will follow. So there is no way that we are going to have students who are going to come to Hamlin and they will be novices and we will be introducing them to AI. The second thing that I would say is that even now, before I think that a lot of high schools are experimenting with AI, but ultimately, some high schools or some schools are forbidding the use of AI, but I wouldn't see, at least in my experience working on this task force, that is not across the board. I think that most schools are realizing that AI is here. It is going to completely change the way that we interact with the world and what we do and how we do our jobs. And so I think that K through 12 is very interested in making sure that students are prepared for that world. And so I think it's very important for Hamlin to remain engaged in those conversations to make sure that we can build on those experiences and we can be ready with an equivalent of what a college experience would look like.
What's also really interesting is that when there are tons of surveys right now about like for students and for K through 12 students whether they use AI or not, and when they ask whether you are using AI, you get a number, right, which is relatively low. But when you rephrase this question as, do you think your peers, or do you know if your peers are using AI? And you get an answer that is 3 times higher. So like you go from like, I don't know, 25% to 75% or something like that. So if you do have this negative connotation about like using AI is not cool, and so people are trying to hide it. So I think in reality, the numbers that we get are hugely underestimated in terms of what people are actually doing.
Or people might not realize. Yeah. Okay. So first comment. So NPR just broadcasted an AI related story yesterday. The essence was AI was released to a subreddit, which is titled Change My Position. The AI was able to convince people to change their moral position more effectively than humans. Aside from the ethical component of not telling Reddit users that they were dealing with AI, it was interesting to note that AI got people to change their deeply held positions more effectively than humans. What are your comments?
That's fascinating. I have not seen that NPR story. I will make sure that I go look that up on their website. I am not surprised. So if any of you have interacted with an AI platform, one of the first things that at least I notice about it is how eager it is to embrace me with all of my flaws. So it is one of the things that it constantly reminds me that I'm absolutely perfect. It tells me that my ideas are great, that I am brilliant. I'm asking deep and thoughtful questions. It always finds something great about my work, even if it then gives me suggestions for how to improve it. And I think that humans are biologically evolved to seek approval. That is how we find social cohesion. That's how we collaborate, right? Is by creating societies where we give each other positive feedback. That's what makes us more likely to collaborate. And so now we have a partner that never judges us, never critiques us. And I think that it creates trust in a way that in interactions with humans who tend to be far more interested in themselves than in us when they're talking to us, just far more persuasive, I would say. I'll also add that it can be really dangerous, because if you think that any human being who comes to a platform like this is going to be validated, then you could also see someone who might have violent or antisocial tendencies, who might also be validated by AI and potentially supported in doing all kinds of things that we might find questionable. I haven't tested this. I really do not want to be the person um, who um, who lets that out into the AI universe. But I don't know what happens if I engage in some sort of a hateful behavior or speech and I talk to AI about that.
One other thing that is really interesting, that comment that aside from the fact that people didn't know that they were interacting with AI, by now AI passed pretty much every test, right? So if you've ever heard about Turing test or the Loveless test, which is more about creativity, and Turing test is whether people can identify AI from human interactions, right? And so by now, I passed both of those tests. So in a completely blind studies, when people are asked to interact with AI or non-AI and say which one is which, most people in these kinds of situations cannot identify it correctly, right? So AI completely passes for human, which is fascinating and interesting and scary, kind of all at the same time.
Okay. I'm interested to find out where these platforms, the AI companies, are located by countries. Do you have a sense of where some of the most used AI platforms are physically located?
That's a really good question. My sense is that they're actually distributed all over the world, right, through various server farms. So we do know where the headquarters are. So the majority of AI companies are located in the United States. Some of them are of the most powerful ones. Some of them are in the UK. We do know that the Chinese at this point have also some very powerful models. So those, I would say, are the leading contenders. But in terms of where the software is, we do know that in order for AI to work really well, we need to have these enormous facilities with enormous computing power, and they're being built all over the world. So there's some in the Midwest, there's some, right, there's some all over the place. So it's not like when we put in a request, it all goes to Seattle and then it comes back from Seattle because we're interacting with Copilot. I think that it is just a distributed web that's everywhere.
Can you provide examples on how AI might positively impact our elderly population other than medical? Asking for a friend.
So I read this. I'll say one thing and then I'll hand it over to Irina, give her a couple of minutes to think about it. I read one study that suggested that one thing that might be really helpful is for AI to provide companionship. So to be always present, to be able to have those kinds of conversations, to potentially connect, right, to additional people outside. So if you are at the stage of your life where potentially you're a little less mobile or less likely to venture out and to see people socially, AI already has modules, and there are specific platforms that are even built that way to provide friendship and to provide companionship. And I think that Irina provided that as one of the examples. Right now, people who do rely on AI for friendship, and I'm not suggesting for sole friendship or to be singularly focused on AI as the only person that you ever talk to, but people who do rely on these platforms for conversations tend to experience less loneliness, and that's not only at certain ages, that is across the ages. And for instance, for people who are suffering from depression or anxiety, it also lowers suicidal ideation by a huge percentage point, right? It can be really positive for mental health. It can help people reestablish relationships with actual human beings. So I think that there is enormous possibility there. In addition, there is opportunity for people of all ages to experience creativity, to have curated ways of, let's say, you want to figure out your next book club list of what you're going to be reading, and and you're tired of all of the things that you've been paying attention to, you can ask AI to create lists of top 10 things in, this genre, that genre. Lately, I have been I've been testing AI to see what kind of a sense of humor it has. And so I've been asking it to tell me funny stories. I have not laughed that hard for a while. So AI right now is telling me stories from academia. It is as if it was sitting in on faculty meetings. I mean, it is incredible what it can produce. Um, so I think that there, of course, is a danger, right? There's the other side of the sword as well, which is that there are people who become over reliant on AI that way. And research shows that if you do interact with it for hours on end at a time, it actually decreases your mental health. But having daily kind of conversations, right? Maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, on the short end, it can be profoundly beneficial just to general mental health. Spending 8 hours on it, not good.
You can also, just to add to what Marcela was talking about, you can also program it, and potentially I can see how adult children can program it for their elderly parents. You can ask AI to deliver reminders in the morning, or reminders at particular times of the day to do certain things. So something related to medication, something related to self-care, something related to, hey, did you read the book today? Something that is not the same thing every day, but AI will modify this based on what's happening in the life of that person, for example, in multiple different ways. And so this way it becomes, it's hard for me to constantly remind my mom to do something, right? So this could be a helper in these relationships, not a substitute for the relationships, but a helper in these relationships. AI is writing a book for me right now because I programmed it every morning to deliver me a story about a library. And I'm not going to tell you more about, but it's notes in the library. And so now I have all this like collection of various notes in the library. I would never, ever, ever make them up myself, but it's actually really kind of cool.
I know you mentioned how AI is energy hungry. Do you have any insight on the AI energy use versus a Google search? And this person asking says, when I use Google search, it states generative AI is experimental. Does that mean that they are using AI? In which case, how can a Google search use less energy if they're using AI?
You can Google search now has this AI thing built in, and you can turn it off if you don't want to use it. And it's not just like Google search is still Google search with just features of AI kind of built in. When you use ChatGPT for even simple things, it's like 10 to 100 times more. It uses 10 to 100 times more energy, exponentially more energy than regular Google searches. There is some data that shows that the fact that people are polite to AI and start their conversation with AI, and I'm guilty of that, is like, good morning, Chad, how are you doing? So this question of how are you doing, asked by thousands of people every morning, actually costs us tons of water and tons of energy. So just one of the examples of where, this is definitely a problem. Like, I don't want to make it sound like it's not a legit issue. It is a legit issue. And that's why a lot of people who work in that field think that we need to develop nuclear power. And there's a lot of push to develop nuclear power and build, again, nuclear plants. We need to figure out either to how use less energy for AI or where to get more energy.
How to, for instance, make solar collection more more effective, right? How to make solar, how to do the cooling. It is the powering of the CPUs, and it is the cooling that take up all of this energy.
How does one improve the skill to ask questions most effectively? And what guardrails can be used to protect yourself?
So one of the two different questions, if you are interested in learning how to do effective prompting, I would highly recommend, there are a number of different places online where you can go and take like a prompting course. One, let me look. I just had it open over here. Google has a number of certificates that you can do. So, for instance, if you just look up Grow with Google Prompting Essentials, they have a self-paced course. It's completely free. It takes 6 hours. So you can kind of learn the ins and outs of doing effective prompting. You can also get a certificate in AI Essentials. And then if you want to learn more, there are many, many, many others. Of course, they're going to assume they're going to be working with Gemini, which is the Google-based AI platform. That is the one that's inbuilt into the platform that we use here at Hamlin. Though, of course, people use all kinds of different platforms. So that's one possibility. You can probably find other professional development opportunities. There are many of them that are freely available online. There are some that are specifically tailored for teachers or for other professionals. But I would say that if I were to recommend one, I'd recommend the one with Google, because I find that one to be trustworthy. In terms of how to protect yourself, so there sometimes is a misperception that whatever you put into the AI will just kind of appear on somebody else's search, right? That everything that you put in there will become visible to someone else. That is not exactly how it works, right? So it's not like somebody's going to harvest everything that you said and then somebody else is going to see it. But if you just interact with the default free models in particular, then everything that you put in there, your interactions with the AI become part of its learning. So as the AI is interacting with you and it's gathering data about whether or not you're pleased with the outcomes and what kind of questions you're asking, all of that becomes part of the algorithmic learning, right? So it will be, Molly asked me this question and she really wasn't satisfied until she asked me 3 times. I'm going to learn from that experience. And when Irina asks me a similar question, I'm not going to give her necessarily the same answer, but I am learning more about what humans actually want. That said, I would always use caution to not put any personal data in there. I would not put your social security number. I would not put your credit card numbers, none of those things, just because AI is hackable. So it's not that the AI system itself is collecting your information, but there could be some rogue agent that could, under certain circumstances, get access. The other thing is that most of these platforms by now have confidential settings. So for instance, the Gemini platform that we have here at Hamlin that's built into the university-wide platform is automatically set to this confidential mode, which means that none of the information that anybody here on campus inputs into the platform becomes part of the large language model. It just does not leave our campus. So I still would say we would never put our students' names in it or social security numbers or any of their personal information. We should never be putting that anywhere online. But there are ways in which you can further protect yourself. So if you have the paid version of ChatGPT 4, which costs $20 a month, there's a way that you can make sure that that is set to the confidential mode as well. So that is an added layer of protection. But even the basic models, as I said, they're not going to take whatever paragraph you're going to write, right? Somebody sends you an angry letter, you don't have it in yourself to respond politely. Your AI friend is the best companion who can write that super polite letter back. That letter is not going to be shared with anyone else. That's not how it works.
Just to add really quickly too, if you don't want to take big courses right away and you just want to start playing around with the prompts, iteration is the one thing that I found that is really important. Don't just write one question and be happy with an answer. Think about what you don't like about the answer. Think critically about what could be good to include into the answer and modify your prompt, or just follow up with the prompt. Again, like I think about AI as my students. I ask them to do something, and frequently when they give me something back, I'm like, that's not at all what I was asking. And then when I'm starting to think about why, well, it's because I didn't ask them what I thought I was asking them to do. So this iteration is really important, and you will get a benefit.
And the thing that I would add to that's a very important point, right? Just try it and try different things. Just remember that AI doesn't get impatient. So I think that there's part of our psychology, right? We're reticent. We ask a question, we get something back that was not at all what we wanted, And it's impolite to say, no, you didn't understand me. That's not what I wanted. I want something different. AI does not judge you. It is an algorithm. And in fact, it is programmed to deliver what you want. And so if it gets a sense that it didn't give you what you wanted, it will try so much harder to kind of get you to the right place. So it will benefit, and it will be more than happy to answer the same question 15 times. So the only thing you have to think about is the water usage and the energy usage. But like, in terms of how the platform works, it's not like Irina that I cannot go over there and ask to her office and ask her the same question for the third time. She
You totally can.
I'm off my rocker. But GPT or Gemini or any one of the, or Claude, they don't think, right? They don't think that way. They're eager to assist you. So just keep asking until you start kind of getting the feeling for how to do this.
Okay, I'm going to scan for one last question. I know we're over time. If that's okay with you guys, I will find one last one. While I'm looking though, I want to mention that somebody put in the chat that they're a middle school teacher that would love to have a session about how to use AI in a middle school classroom. So that was very interesting. Here's one that we'll close with. There's plenty of questions, folks. So we'll make sure that we send that QR code with different resources out to folks who are on this webinar. But one last one, concerns, and you've talked about this a bit, but with regards to classroom and ethics, concerns with plagiarism, and when students use AI for research, like, are there, the question is, how can you deal with this? But I might rephrase it and say, how is that handled in the classroom? If there really is a situation where a student is using AI in a way that is outside of the bounds that have been discussed.
So I think that both of us, that's a whole separate session, right? I think both of us have a lot to say. I'm going to say very quickly and then give Irina a chance to have the last word, that the advent of AI has to make us rethink how we teach, right? Regurgitation of knowledge. I mean, we've moved past that such a long time ago. I mean, with the advent of internet and smartphones, when students have a powerful computer in their pocket, there is no reason why they have to memorize facts, right? There just doesn't make sense. But I think that this just brings it home even more, right? We have to rethink how we're asking students to learn, how we're asking them to actually use AI as co-intelligence to actually become better and smarter, and to start addressing some of the wicked problems that humanity has to tackle in order for us to be sustainably on this planet. And so I think that we do have to change our assignments. There is no way that we can detect the use of AI. So if people think that there is some sort of like a plagiarism detector, we can run a paper through that. It's going to, there by now is absolutely no way to detect it. We get more false positives from that than anything of use. As Irina said, there is no way that we can even detect when we're interacting with AI, whether that's an AI or a human being. So many ways to get around it. So we just have to give up on trying to detect plagiarism. One of the things that I find really helpful, and I use the same thing with faculty work, if they want to use AI to produce something, that's fine, but they own the result, right? And so, for instance, if a student turns in a paper and I'm not sure if they wrote it themselves or if they actually even understand those concepts at that level, there is nothing that's stopping me from inviting them to my office and asking them to have a conversation with me about the paper. It takes literally 3 minutes to detect whether or not the student has that kind of level of understanding and can explain those concepts, right? So a student, and many students do this, use AI as tutors, right? To actually explore areas, to test their knowledge, to ask AI to check their thinking. And I think that that is, all of those are invaluable tools where students can basically get personalized tutoring based on what they do or do not understand. But there are ways, some of them come from the Middle Ages, right? That come through conversations where we can detect whether or not the learning has been achieved. Irina?
I just want to add one more thing to what Marcela was talking about. There was just a big study on cheating that was released, and it found that with AI, students don't cheat more. They use a different tool to cheat, but the actual percentage of cheating or frequency of cheating didn't actually go up. So it goes back to that idea that AI provides us with opportunity right now to rethink what we are doing and how we are doing this. In this case, what kinds of things we ask students to do as assignments. It doesn't create new issues. So it's a good tool for us all as a society to think about who we are and why we are here.
All right, you guys, thank you so much. I'm just going to actually read one last thing. It's not a question, but there's a few thank yous coming in. And one of our attendees said, thank you. As you stated, AI is modeled by data. It is exposed. It also is programmed by real people. Real people have biases, hence the picture generated by doctors. As you know, Western and Eastern have very different philosophy and values. Very interesting topic. Thank you for the topic. So thank you so much.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
And like I said, we will send out that QR code and have this presentation up online too. So there'll be other opportunities for you to take a look at some resources. Thanks, you guys.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate your time. All right. Bye all.